loves teaching family consumer sciences. And she says the reason why is because the students are excited to participate in hands-on labs, and she feels that she is teaching them vital skills that they will use throughout their lives. She is currently studying school administration at the University of Findlay and is interested in researching the role industry credentials have on a student's experience in high school. Anna, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I want to start off by saying I unexpectedly am caring for my son. My husband got caught up at work, so you might see a little one, so I apologize in advance. Roseanne in our last session was talking about how important it is to sometimes have guest speakers in when we might not feel comfortable with subject matter, like talking with students about higher concepts in financial management, and that really was the perfect segue to talk about the role of partnerships. So let me go ahead and just share my screen. Put something in the comments section of chat, a link to like a worksheet essentially. So if you want to take some notes and jot down your ideas as we go through, you have access to that. I am no longer able to see you guys, so if you cannot see my screen, please let me know by just unmuting, because I have no idea what you can see and not. So today, again, we're talking about community partnerships in family consumer science. I came from a role in college administration and student affairs, and in that position, working in student activities, we're constantly focusing on partnerships, and it was something that I knew I really wanted to have in a classroom as well. The purpose of creating these relationships and working with constituents and building partnerships is to work towards beneficial goals for both you and your constituent groups. Some great ways to build partnerships are to collaborate together on a project or potentially write a grant together, host students for internships or have your students go to internships at other places, bringing in guest speakers, guest presenters, guest lecturers, or just having discussions between subject area experts. We are not all teachers. We don't all have students that we're working with on a daily basis, but if we can still collaborate as subject area experts and as professionals, it will help us grow in our own personal and professional goals. So I have a 5-step process that I go about every school year when working with community partners and just really thinking through who I can connect with in my community. These are the 5 steps: assessing your needs, identifying partners, thinking about mutual benefits, reaching out, and then always following up. So we're going to start with assessing your needs. We all have needs within our organization. None of us are 100% perfect FCS educators or professionals who know every single one of the broad topics that encompass our profession. In assessing your needs, you're really looking at some of the weaknesses for either yourself as an individual professional or for your organization and community around you. So where are some areas that you may not have expertise? Is that financial management or potentially entrepreneurship? There are a lot of different areas that you might see that need to be addressed. Maybe what are some things that you wish you had the time or resources to invest in, but you don't at this point in time? So if money wasn't an option, what kinds of things would you want to be doing in your programs? Also thinking about just how can you add a little bit more fun to the things that you're doing on a daily basis in your position. So when I sit down to kind of assess my needs every school year, since I'm a teacher, I start off trying to come up with 2 to 4 areas that I think need to be improved. So things that I want to do to add to some of my classes. I'm not doing this for every single class. I'm kind of looking at my programs overall and thinking about where my needs are. Last school year, 2 of my needs the summer before would have been a weakness of my organization was that I wanted to offer an industry credential, hopefully serve safe, but it was expensive and I knew that my program wasn't going to pay for it. So that was one of my needs. Another need, answering the fun question, was I just really wanted to bring in a guest speaker who was very passionate about their industry as an entrepreneur and coming in to get my students kind of excited about that topic. So step 1, assess your needs. Step 2, brainstorming and identifying community partners. This really, think big, think coming up with lots of ideas. We all have other people, other professionals that we work with on a regular basis. We have those guest speakers that we always call up, or we have, you know, a local official that we usually call for whatever we might need. Really trying to think outside of the box when identifying community partners. I like to create a web and use that as a way to brainstorm, and I will show you that here in a second. But I really like to think big and also think local. So in your very tight community, who are some people that you can contact? Thinking about key organizations, so maybe not just people, but organizations that potentially have a similar mission to mine and might be good partners. And then finally, thinking about the constituents in your community who provide similar services or who work with similar groups of people. So for example, the WIC office, working with potentially young mothers, which I work with a lot of those in my child development class, along with our grads coordinator for the county. So could the 3 of us work together, me, the grads teacher, and the WIC office to provide services for our students? So thinking about those shared constituents. This is a copy of that web that I was talking about. I use this web brainstorming for everything. My students get really sick of it. But this is what I usually pull out every summer when I'm thinking about who I can reach out to create better opportunities for my students. I'm thinking about 4 different categories. I'm thinking about the organizations that I could potentially partner with. I'm thinking big. I'm thinking about who shares constituents, and I'm also thinking local. So here is an example of my completed web that I might be thinking about. Some of those organizations might be a local daycare or a community college in my area who could come in and potentially present, or we could go visit. Thinking big, maybe going to visit a giant hospital near us, or going and working with some of the Kroger facilities to tour the back of house. Shared constituents, again, I said WIC, or maybe my local library. I have partnered with them on child development activities, and they love coming into my classes. And then thinking local, we have a local McDonald's chain. Well, it's McDonald's that are owned by the same franchise, Scott Family McDonald's, or maybe our county health department. I think the more groups that you can think of to possibly partner with, the better this next step is going to be. So step 1, remember I outlined that one of my things I wanted to do was offer an industry credential. When I'm thinking through community partners, I look at my list and say, hey, maybe I could ask some local restaurants to sponsor the Serve Safe food handler exam. That was one of my areas, right? My Think Local, Scott Family McDonald's. They actually have sponsored all of my students to take the Serve Safe exam now. That bottom one, thinking about what's something fun that I might be able to add. I wanted my students to interact with people who are passionate about their industry. Maybe I want to call in a guest speaker. So I take that information, I take my big brainstorming, and now I'm moving on to step 3. Think about mutual benefits. We all want to be making connections that will help further our industry or our business or our students. And so we need to think about who else could benefit from working with me. So I'm going to be helping them. They're going to be helping me. How can I think that through? So once you have your web, look at all of those different areas. What could that person or organization gain from a relationship with me? I had Jamie Oliver on there for thinking big. Probably can't come up with anything that he might be able to gain from me, though it would be really fun to have him as a guest speaker in my class. Still working on that one. Is there a project or maybe a grant that both of us could benefit from if we're working together? really, I like to think about service projects, and is there a constituent group that I would really like to partner with, either with one of my classes or my FCCLA organization, that might be able to do a service project in conjunction with someone else, maybe a local daycare. So really thinking through those. So, okay, now I'm taking you through the planning process that goes on in my brain all the way to step 3. So I'm just going to do the top one. A weakness in my organization is I want to offer an industry credential. We don't have the money. So I'm thinking about local businesses, local restaurants that may want to sponsor us. I came up with a letter that I wrote, and I sent it to all restaurants within my zip code, actually all food related businesses. So I also sent it to grocery stores, asking people to please think about partnering with me on one of 3 things. 1, I would like their help in sponsoring the Serve Safe industry credential. Would they be able to help sponsor some of my students for that? Number 2, would you like to be a guest speaker in my class, or would you like to host open interviews for jobs in my classroom during lunchtime? And number 3, would you be interested in us coming on a field trip to your facility to kind of see what goes on in your business? I got great feedback from students. We were, through those mutual benefits, right? I was offering to them to come and interview my students, or for me to promote some of the jobs that they have in their local business. And I got a ton of people coming back. Sorry, I kind of stepped ahead. So reaching out. So I decided I was going to send that letter, and I went for it. I searched for contact information. I used some of our local information. Our Chamber of Commerce had information about all of our local businesses. I looked on Yelp. I asked friends like, hey, do you know managers of local restaurants that I can reach out to specifically? And then I sent a letter. I followed up with phone calls to people who I knew actually were managers of these organizations. But if I had gotten emails, I could have done that as well. Sometimes in order to reach out to someone, you have to fill out a contact form online. That's kind of my least favorite because I just never know if it's actually going to get there. With a letter, some of them I got back to the high school, and so I knew that it didn't go through, but other than that, I knew that they went on. If I'm calling, I know that I'm getting in touch with somebody. This is my little wisdom for you. Please be mindful about how many people you're reaching out to at one time. So for example, like really focusing on trying to find people to sponsor Serve Safe exams and not contacting everybody on your web at one time. It can be very overwhelming when you hear back from way too many industry partners at the same time about a variety of different projects. If I'm trying to plan 6 different partnerships at the same time, I'm not going to be able to hold all of those balls in the air while still doing my regular job. So being very strategic about who you're reaching out to is very important in this process. I don't know if anyone else has been a little overzealous like me, but it gets overwhelming, and then you can't give enough of yourself to each one of those people. So finally, after you have worked with someone, after you've had someone be a guest speaker, or you've worked together on a grant, or you have collaborated on something, or you've met for lunch so that you can discuss what's going on in the industry, don't forget to follow up. Following up is one of the most important things. Everybody really appreciates an email or a handwritten card. I like to follow up with cards or postcards where I'm just saying thank you. Sometimes it's having my students sign their names as well, but I think it just leads to continuing that door being open for collaboration. People want to work with you again if they know that you had a good experience and they also had a good experience. It's also important to try and reconnect on a regular basis. It could be annually with these people so that you can keep that partnership open. So you can say, hey, do you have anything coming up that you would need my assistance with, or any great projects that I can, partner with you on? Making sure that you are on these constituents' radar once you have established those relationships, because it is easier to, I feel like, to maintain relationships than constantly going out and trying to meet people and start building from the ground up. Here is my contact information if you have any questions. If you are a teacher and you would like a copy of the letter that I send to local restaurants, please let me know. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from local restaurants. We've gotten over $1,000 for students to take ServSafe exam. And last year we had a really great field trip planned where we were going to go to 4 different restaurants or Kroger, some different food related businesses and see how they do different parts of their job. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because of COVID, but that's just how things are right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you guys. I have found that it just really helps to collaborate because I can everything. And I think that it really benefits both me and my students because they're learning from people who aren't me. I think they get a little tired of seeing me every single day, you know, in the same role. So does anyone have collaboration from their own schools? We would love to hear it if you would like to unmute yourself and join us. Great. I'm seeing that someone is, Mary Beth, do you want to share your experience?
Sure. So I teach capstone, which is a mandated or a graduation requirement course at my high school where students have to pursue a passion project, and it can truly be whatever they want it to be. But I had a young person who wanted to create their own language. And I have to admit, I'm a big Game of Thrones nerd, so I'll just own that. But anyways, so the person on Game of Thrones who created all of these languages, Dothraki and High Valyrian, his name is David J. Peterson. So I just reached out to him through the power of the internet and told him a little bit about my student and how amazing this person was. And lo and behold, he became this person's mentor. So it's kind of like, I don't know, the Bill Gates of, linguistics, saying, hey, yeah, I'm going to be this person's mentor. And this person was able to actually write about this and use this as part of her college admissions letter.
That's awesome. Way to think big. And I'm sure that student will remember this experience forever. They'll have that relationship with this person, but then they'll also remember you as being the one that helped to plant that seed and to, foster a relationship right there. And that is such a great thing as an FCS professional.
So, Anna, I had a question for you. Do you have like a timetable of sorts to remind you, like, how often you reach out to people, or even just to say, to send so-and-so a thank you letter?
Not really. I try to send thank yous or follow-ups within 1 week. Sometimes that doesn't really happen, of when they came to my classroom, but I think that people appreciate it. Even if it has been more than a week, I'd rather send it a little bit later than that. People understand that we are all busy. I personally use our breaks as great times to reach out. I feel like as a teacher that I'm very inundated during the school year, just with everything going on. And so I try and spend some time in the summer. I usually block out a week for my own PD towards the beginning of the summer. And that's when I reach out to a lot of these people. So I'm following up with people that I have used in the past as guest speakers or as partners. And then I'm also working on brainstorming and establishing some new relationships. I try to establish 1 or 2 new partners a school year because I just think that it's helping to broaden my network as a professional and also helping my students. It might mean that they're coming in or interacting with me once a year, or it might not be. They might just be on my radar as a possibility for student internships or something else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Susan Shockey, do you use advisory groups and include them? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think all of us FCS teachers to receive funding have to have advisory committees. And the advisory committee is made up with from professionals who are related to our field of family and consumer science. And I have been able to pull in some of these people I have met through networking to be on my committee. So for example, I have one of the higher ups at the Scott family McDonald's, who they're the ones who give us a lot of money for our ServSafe, and she is on my committee. I have a representative from Greene County Children's Services who is on my committee. I have the director of a nonprofit in a local community who works with a mentoring program. She is on my committee. So reaching out to some of these people helps to broaden our network, right? These are people who I am meeting with twice a year in a committee setting to talk about the program and how it can move forward. And then those people are also able to help introduce me to other people. So I have used that as a networking tool as well. Like my contact at Children's Services isn't really the best person to come and talk during my child development class, but has been able to put me in contact with someone who works directly with children in the foster care system. And then I have that person come in and speak. Yeah. Do those of you who work in extension, do you have advisory committees as well? Is it just teachers?
Hi, this is Roseanne. Yes, I have an all extension advisory committee and then specifically one for FCS. And we meet 5 times a year and then as needed for community efforts.
Great. What are, Roseanne, who are some of the people that you partner with in your local community?
So on my specific FCS one, I have Head Start, Family Consumer Science educators in our local K-12 schools, Head Start educators, some people that are with like United Way commissioners, some bank representatives, insurance representatives, and then a few that are just with the health department and community at large members.
Wonderful. That's a very diverse group.
We try.
Does anyone else have a good partnership experience that they would like to share with us?
I teach family and consumer, I teach ServSafe classes that you have there. I have a great partnership with my health department as they don't teach it and I teach it. So they will give me all their addresses or actually print labels for me to send out my brochures on ServSafe. They come and will talk in my classes. And we have a great partnership back and forth. She'll hand out my brochures for classes for people who need it. So we have a good partnership.
That's fantastic. It's mutually beneficial to both of you to have that partnership. Great.
Several years ago, when I was working with the 6th District Educational Compact up here in Northeast Ohio, we had a bankruptcy judge on our advisory committee. And her participation was wonderful, and it gave us exposure to an area that we wouldn't normally be acquainted with, I think.
Wow, that's pretty fun. I bet she really enjoyed working on a very different capacity than her daily work.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for us to reach out to the possible partners that we don't necessarily think of first as being collaborators with FCS, because people are so excited to share their expertise and they are so excited to hear from us. I feel like the majority of people who I reach out to specifically, like to ask them something, they are more willing to either do it, they're excited, or they say, I am not a perfect person, but this person is.
My experience with, I'm Margaret Jenkins in Claremont County with Experience. And my experience with the advisory committees has always been that it really drove my programming because of those different individuals that would come and get involved, and then there would be some sort of programming that came out of it. And that's with extension. And when I had it in the class, when I was a classroom teacher, teaching family and consumer science in the schools with career tech, it did the same thing there too. It actually functioned in the same way, where when you bring people in to do a presentation, then there would be some kind of linkages afterwards, either the mentoring type, or they would lead you to down another path and kind of like down another hole to find something else. And so I remember in the schools, when we would get together in the, you know, when we had lunch and all that stuff together, that many times I was the only one that was having, you know, the only class where individuals were coming into. So it really kind of then elevated the whole program in the school, because people notice that when stakeholders are coming in.
Mm-hmm. It's also a great opportunity to get publicity for our programs or events that we have going on, because they can post about it as well on their social media or within their newsletters. Sometimes it's easier to get news coverage from our local newspapers when it's multiple groups working together towards a common cause. And so I have found that leveraging some of these programs that I'm doing with other people get a wider audience, and it makes my program look very good. And I think that some of us as FCS educators worry that our programs are, you know, often seen as on the chopping block when we have budget issues. So making sure that people see the value and see our connection to the local community is so important for what we do.